Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ASEAN Researchers Network on Energy and Climate Change, our next special webinar 2026. So my name is Nadia Geraldine Handani, and I'm a research assistant at the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, and I will be your master of ceremony for today's session. So before we begin today's discussion, allow me to briefly introduce ARNECC. So, the ASEAN Researchers Network on Energy and Climate Change, or ARNECC as we call it, is a platform established by the ASEAN Center for Energy through the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, providing a discussion forum on ASEAN's energy climate nexus and beyond. So, if you would like to be a part of our network, you will find the registration link in the chat box shortly. And for this special webinar, we are pleased to feature three speakers who have been part of ACCEPT's collaboration with researchers across the region. So in this session, ACCEPT is collaborating with the University of Queensland, Australia, to present the recently published paper, Sustainable Energy Transition for BIMP Regional Power Grid with Technology Ranking and Optimal Mix. So this collaboration, including the paper we will discuss today, was supported through Accept's call for proposals. We are also delighted to share that the paper was recently published last July 2026 in Applied Energy. So this collaboration, today, we will hear directly from the researchers about their study, key findings, and what these findings could mean for ASEAN's energy transition. So, to open the session, it is my pleasure to invite Ms. Aldila Nurrahima, Project Manager of Accept 2, to deliver her remarks and presentation. So, Ms. Aldila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy and the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, or ACCEPT, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this our next special webinar. First, I would like to thank our speakers and research partners. First, Professor Mithulan Nadarajah from the University of Queensland, Dr. Rakibuzzaman Shah from Federation University of Australia, and also Mas Pinto Anugrah representing the University of Queensland and Universitas Andalas. Thank you so much for collaborating with ACCEPT through the ARNECC call for paper, and of course to share the findings from our recently published paper. I would also like to thank everyone attending today, all of you students, participants, researchers. Your participation reflects the growing interest in research and regional collaboration on energy and climate change across ASEAN. Now, before we begin the main presentation, I think I would like to take around 5 minutes to briefly introduce ACCEPT and then share some of our achievement, explain the role of ARNECC itself, as well as highlight several publications produced through the network. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, or ACCEPT, this is the ASEAN's first integrated project focusing especially on the energy and climate nexus. The project is funded by the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and implemented by the ASEAN Center for Energy in collaboration with the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, or NUPI. We began the first phase of ACCEPT in 2018. Building on that foundation, then we have phase 2, which has been implemented since 2022 until now, 2026. And our overall purpose of this phase 2 is to support ASEAN member states and ASEAN institutions in moving towards a low carbon energy system and contributing to carbon neutrality while strengthening regional capacity, policy coherence, and inclusive implementation. In simple terms, ARNECC helps connect energy and climate discussions. We do this by providing evidence, strengthening capacity, and creating platforms where policymakers, researchers, businesses, and other stakeholders can exchange knowledge and working together. Now, ARNECC works toward three main strategic outcomes. The first is to advance knowledge sharing. So in here, we promote the exchange of knowledge on the energy and climate nexus through policy relevant studies, as well as practical exchanges with like science policy business forums. The aim is not only to publish research, but to also make evidence useful and accessible for policymaking. And then the second outcome is to enhance ASEAN's capacity to pursue a low carbon economy and move towards carbon neutrality. So these includes enhancing or strengthening practical knowledge on net zero and supporting both regional and also national energy system modeling. So these activities can help ASEAN to better understand possible pathways and possible decarbonization pathways and also their implication. And then the third outcome focuses on regional structures and inclusion. So under this outcome, ARNECC has supported stronger institutional coordination on energy and climate, as well as developed regional knowledge hub and advanced gender equality within the energy climate agenda. And in here, in this slide, we'll give you a quick picture of what has been achieved during our implementation since 2022. So we have organized 5 policy dialogues and 6 regional workshops on energy and climate, as well as 2 study visits to Norway and Germany. Across our policy dialogue and workshop, we have convened more than 300 policymakers, experts, and stakeholders from all 11 ASEAN member states. And our digital knowledge platform, or the knowledge hub that we have, has been expanded significantly. So ARNECC publication have recorded almost 37,000 downloads, and the website also received more than 343,000 views. And I think right now our followers on Instagram also has been growing to more than around 7,600 followers. So the reason why I mentioned regarding these figures is I think that like these matters because they show that the work that we do is reaching people beyond individual project activities. And our knowledge hub, our website function as a knowledge hub where research, data, publication, events can continue to support ASEAN's low carbon transition. Now, one of our initiatives in ARNECC is the ASEAN Researchers Network on Energy and Climate Change, or ARNECC. So this is, we create ARNECC because addressing ASEAN's energy and climate challenges requires a strong and connected research community. So ARNECC, so these networks, we wanted to bring together researchers, academic professionals, and students who are interested in energy and climate change. So it has 4 main objectives. Not only that we wanted to build network of researchers, but we also wanted to foster collaboration and also knowledge sharing. And then we also aim to promote and support collaborative research in here through our call for proposal, but also like in our ARNECC, in our website, in ARNECC, we have what we call ARNECC database, where we can also highlight your research paper, for example, that is within the energy and climate nexus. So then we can promote it and share it to our, not only through our platform, but also so it can reach more people within this research. So that's like what we are trying to do here, where we would like also to promote and support other papers from researchers under ARNECC. So therefore, ARNECC serves as a platform that is that can connect across institutions, across countries, and also develop joint ideas and bring their findings into wider ASEAN discussions. So for those who are not a member yet, the registration details and also QR code are here shown in the slide. So we warmly invite you to join the network. And then a good example of how ARNECC supports research collaboration is what I mentioned briefly previously, is through our ARNECC call for proposal. And these are some of the papers that we have published, I think, during this year in 2026. And they are all cover different topics, but they share a common purpose, which is producing practical, policy relevant evidence to support ASEAN's energy transition. Now, our webinar today, our special webinar today, will focus on the third paper here, Sustainable Energy Transition for BIMP Regional Power Grid with Technology Ranking and Optimal Mix. In a moment later on, Professor Mithulan, Dr. Rakib, and also Mas Pinto will present the study's approach, key findings, and implication. And we are really pleased to see this ARNECC supported collaboration result in a published paper that can now be shared with the wider research and policy community. Now, in here, I think the ARNECC papers is also part of ACCEPT broader work to bridge ASEAN's energy and climate agenda. We also have other range of knowledge products on energy and climate nexus. We have, as shown in here, we have several publications, and then not only through call for papers, we also have like academic partnership as well as webinars. In last year, for example, we launched our call for papers attracted more than 150 applicants with 3 themes that are selected, and as one of them will be presenting today. And then we also have supported Thema Day abstracts for the ASEAN International Conference on Energy and Environment, or IEC. Also this year, we will also provide scholarship for the IEC conference that will be held in Manila in October. So for those of you who wanted to apply, submit your abstract, and also apply for the scholarship from ACCEPT as well to receive the funding to present your abstract at the conference in Manila. And then another important area of ACCEPT's work is advancing the energy climate gender nexus. As we know, the energy transition is not only technical or economic process, it also affects people differently. And the success of energy transition depends on who can participate, of course, whose knowledge is recognized, and those who benefits from these opportunities. And for these reasons, ACCEPT has worked on gender through several connected areas, from International Women's Days activities, and then from our publications, outreach and dissemination, as well as speaking engagement, and our in-house capacity building as well. Now, these dimension, I think, is closely connected with ARNECC as well. A strong research network should bring together diverse researchers, disciplines, countries, and perspectives so that the evidence supporting ASEAN's transition is both technically sound and also inclusive. So to conclude, ACCEPT brings together research, capacity building, regional cooperation, as well as inclusive approach to strengthen the connection between ASEAN's energy and climate priorities. ARNECC is an important part of our work because it creates a regional platform through which researchers can collaborate and also translate knowledge into solutions. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Mithulan, Dr. Rakib, and also Pinto for the collaboration and for sharing your work with us today. And I also thank for all students, for all participants, all researchers that joining this special webinar. We hope today's discussion will not only provide insights into the BIMP regional power grid, but also encourage further research partnership through ARNECC. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand the session back to the MC. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Ms. Aldila, for the warm welcome and introduction. So we will now move into today's main presentation. So it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Flavia Frederick, who will be moderating today's discussion. So Flavia is a research associate at the Energy Modeling and Policy Planning Department at the ASEAN Center for Energy, bringing valuable expertise and insights into our regional energy research and initiatives. So she's part of the modeling team that is leading the development of the ninth ASEAN Energy Outlook. With her technical background, she will be guiding us through the interactive discussions. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Flavia to take over the session. Flavia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nadia, for the warm introductions. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the ARNECC special webinar. I'm Flavia, and I will be moderating today's sessions on a topic that is central to the ASEAN's regional energy agenda on how do we plan a shared power grid, not just for reliability and cost, but for a genuinely net zero future. And one key piece of that puzzle is the ASEAN Power Grid, one of the region's flagship initiative for cross-border energy cooperations. But connecting our power system is only part of the challenge. We also need to think about which renewable technologies to prioritize and how to balance technical, economic, environmental, and social considerations that don't always point in the same directions. And to help us unpack this, we will be exploring today's paper, as mentioned earlier, titled Sustainable Energy Transition for BIMP Regional Power Grid with Technology Ranking and Optimal Mix. And this paper was selected through the Accept Call for Papers in 2024, which makes today's episode special. Joining us today are three of the paper's authors. First, we have Mas Pinto Anugrah. He is the lead author and currently a PhD candidate at the University of Queensland and a lecturer at Universitas Andalas. And prior to this, he worked at ACE from 2016 to 2018, where he contributed to the fifth ASEAN Energy Outlook as an energy modeler. Next, we have Dr. Rakibuzzaman Shah. He is an associate professor at Federation University Australia with extensive experience in smart power system and grid integrations. And last but not least, we have Professor Mithulan Nadarajah. He is a professor at the University of Queensland, specializing in renewable energy integrations with a strong research network across ASEAN. Hello, Mas Pinto, Dr. Rakib, and Professor Mithulan. Nice to
Hello,
meet you.
Flavia.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice meeting you.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today. And I think I can hand it over to you for the presentations.
All right. Either I can share it. Can I share the screen? Or Pinto?
Yep, I will share the screen, Professor.
Okay, you can share the screen. So, yeah, first of all, thank you for the introduction, and also thank you for the funding opportunity by the program Accept. So I'll just straight away start the presentation of the paper while waiting for this presentation to pop up. So ASEAN is one of the rapidly growing economic hubs in Asia, with approximately 700 million people, with an average age around 30. So its proximity to China and India, it's going to make the situation even better in the next few decades. As one of the world's fastest growing economic region, ASEAN energy demand is projected to triple in the next 25 to 30 years, making its transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy a compulsion for combating the global concern on the climate change. So not only individual country, but also this ASEAN ASEAN Plan Action for Energy Cooperation set up targets, various renewable energy targets. And however, if you just look at this target, achieving these targets and navigating the massive disparities, unbalances among different member nations, it's going to be a big challenge. balancing between the existing coal against the vast untapped solar, wind, biomass, geothermal, and hydro potential. So this particular work, tries to find the pathways to achieve a sustainable transition for a subset of ASEAN. So we didn't look at the entire ASEAN, we just look at only the subset of ASEAN known as BIMP region, considering power grid interconnection. So BIMP here stands for Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. In Indonesia, we looked at only the Kalimantan area. In Philippines, we look at the Luzon area. Definitely, this can be expanded. The idea suggested in this paper can be expanded to the entire region. So in this research, we looked at the renewable energy technology ranking and also the optimal mix by using a unique type of framework and a methodology. So the agenda for today is going to be, shall we just go to the second slide, Pinto? So we will start with an introduction, highlighting the need of the interconnection, and also just look at the constraints, the sustainable energy constraints we looked at, and also we will highlight on the methodology, and then finally results and discussion before concluding. Next slide, please, Pinto. Yeah, why regional power interconnection is important? So here, in one of our recent studies, we have found out that and then break the myth of interconnection is going to be really expensive. But it turned out to be interconnection is going to increase the cost a little bit, but with a huge benefits. So here, we have to just look at individual countries and then prioritize the renewable energy technology. Again, there are a lot of constraints associated with this one. So it is not going to be a straightforward work, because different countries will have different potentials, different constraints. And as I suggested, in ASEAN, we have all the member nations not necessarily in the same playing field. So here, traditionally, people use this least cost approach, but however, here we have mixed together that one with the not only this least cost analysis, but also the a platform called multi-criteria decision analysis platform. So our study focus is on BIMP sub-region. Next slide, please. So these are the 5 renewable energy technologies we have considered in this study: hydro, solar PV, wind, geothermal, and biomass. And then, of course, these are considered with the so-called sustainability constraints: technical, economical, environmental, and social. As I said before, we have looked at a sub-region of ASEAN, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. Of course, in Indonesia, we looked at Kalimantan, both West Kalimantan and East Kalimantan, as there are 2 separate grids. And also in Philippines, we looked at only the Luzon Island. And next slide, please. So this is the overall framework of the methodology. So we looked at the and just use the the least emission analysis platform, and then we created 6 scenarios, namely the business as usual and the hydro dominated, and then each renewable energy dominated scenario, and generated a lot of data, and then pass on to this multi-criteria decision analysis to rank the technology. So once we rank the technology, the ranking the technology was done here comprehensively by getting input from LEAPS and also the other number of criteria as well. Once we rank the technology, we pass on to decide on the optimal mix. So this is the overall framework and overall approach we adapted in this particular research work. Next slide, please. And then just to give you an idea, this is the BIMP regional map, altogether about 6 nodes and 5 interconnections. As you can see here, WK denote West Kalimantan, North Kalimantan, and then Brunei, Malaysia, and Luzon. Now I will invite my colleagues, both Dr. Rakibuzzaman Shah and Pinto, to continue the presentation.
Yeah, thanks. Pinto, could you please move to the next slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, so the previous slide, please, Pinto. Slide 7, please. Yeah, thank you. As we introduced that we want to rank it, but what was the basis or the idea behind this ranking was we want to create an integrated system planning. If you are if you're really following the energy market and the modeling and Australian renewable energy transition, you know that there is an integrated system planning that is happening. And what is the basis of the integrated system planning is that we looked into, here in Australia, look into the different pathway to achieve the net zero. So government has created number of scenarios, and we also looked into those scenarios, how to achieve that one. So in the BIMP vision, we want to create the similar thing and see that which are the different pathways and how to achieve that one. And then we looked into the business as usual scenario. If you looked into that, which actually looked into the current development plan that is there, into the BIMP vision. Then we create a number of scenarios, putting an emphasis on certain renewable energy technology, such as hydro-dominated system. What will happen and how we can achieve that one. If it is a solar-dominated system, if it is the extreme cases of the solar-dominated system, what is the capacity requirement that could happen? If it is a wind and geothermal-dominated system, then how it could happen? So if you looked into the right side of the map, you can see right side of the slide, you can see that if we have an scenario such as solar high and geothermal low, in that scenario, what will be the capacity requirement? That is coming from the LEAP scenario analysis and things, and as well as it looks into the what is the avoidable scenario, what is the investment required, and then all those things. Then, depending on this scenario, we move into the TOPSIS analysis to look into and ranking the system. Pinto, could you please move into the next slide, please? So in the TOPSIS analysis, we looked into the 11 criteria, and as we have mentioned that there are certain weight and the things that has been used, but we actually considered that there is a 4 specific dimensions that has been considered. One is definitely technical, but if we want to do the integrated system planning, only the technical is not the issue. So we have to look into the economical evaluations. We have to look into emissions and water and land use. I think we will discuss about in our future directions that some of this water use and the land use constraint, and what is the social things with the job creation. We haven't considered a lot of the social thing, just we have looked into the certain social things such as the job creation, but we understand that in just energy transition, there are some other social impact that could affect this development and the things. So Pinto, you can take it from here and discuss the results.
All right, I will continue. Thank you, Professor Mithulan and Dr. Shah. This slide is just to give an idea how TOPSIS process the calculation. So there are 4 steps here in TOPSIS in calculate the ranking. First one is we have to normalize all the criteria. We cannot directly compare each criteria. For example, we cannot compare the capacity in gigawatts versus the amount of investment, which could be millions of dollars, versus probably hundreds or thousands jobs that will be generated per megawatt, the different units. So we have to normalize all the criteria and to comparable from scale from 0 to 1. And then we do the weightage. The weightage is the most important part in multi-criteria decision analysis. Here, all the stakeholders, all the relevant stakeholders need to give the weightage. What are they prioritizing from all the criteria that has set? For example, they might be prioritizing the economic development, probably some other prioritizing social. Then we have to sit together. We have to put certain weighted for each criteria there. Then there's a little bit formula. The complete formula is available on the paper. We have to measure the distance, because the concept of TOPSIS is to measure how far it is to the ideal situation and how far it is from the worst case situation. So imagine it's like a spectrum from left to end on two sides. On the left side is the worst case, say like a 0 score, and the 1 is the best score. So this score is then computed into the final one. We call it to rank. Then the TOPSIS will produce, we call it the closeness coefficient, or CI, or closeness index. Some literature would say that. Based on this CI score, we rank these five technology options in our paper. But the problem is, again, back to the weightage. Probably we could not use one set of weightage. Of course, we cannot use that, because some would say, oh, that's a little bit subjective. Maybe for this stakeholder, they want to prioritize economic. Maybe for that other stakeholder, they want to prioritize the technical thing. They want to give score more into the environmental and all those things. That's why we create a sensitivity analysis, and we develop like 12 different scenarios to test certain criteria. We give a different score to this criteria and see how the ranking affect, how the score would come up, how the ranking would change, and something like that. There are 3 sets here based on priority, and this, in the middle one is the individual criteria. Specific criteria we test, we give a very high score, very high weightage. And then the extreme cases, we give a 90% weightage to environmental and to economic. And the last one is equal weight, meaning that all the criteria we give the same weightage. There's no criteria that higher or lower, just give the equal weight. So we want to see how the CI score across the technologies, how the ranking will move between the technologies. And here is the result. On the left side is the CI score, on the right side is the ranking. Particularly interesting is the solar. Most of the time, solar rank number 1 compared to the other technology. But we can see that there are 2 cases here that solar drops far to the lowest ranking. On the other hand, we can see that hydro and biomass relatively consistent ranking. Biomass consistently on the below ranking, and hydro consistently on second ranking. And geothermal and wind keeps changing between the middle ranking. So here we can say that there are certain criteria that affect the ranking of this technology. In case of solar, test C and test G is we push into the more into economical. This is quite reasonable, because we could see that in solar, if we want to use more solar to achieve net zero emission in a regional settings, we would need more capacity, hence we would need more investment to achieve that. This head-to-head, just to give an example about what are the ranking shift with stakeholder priorities. on test G, for example, a pure economic way, we can see that solar drops into the lowest ranking with very low CI score. On the other hand, if we want to go with only considering environmental aspect, then solar would be having the highest CI score. Hence, solar will become the ranking number 1 in our criteria. And because of that ranking shift across various tests, various weighted settings, we do also a robustness analysis to see how actually this ranking behave. And this is 2 example. For example, mean absolute deviation. The lower score will be more stable, meaning that we can see here biomass and hydro is a more stable ranking. It stays consistent ranking. However, if we look at the mean CI score, the higher score of CI, it gives a better performance across the different weightage. And here, solar PV get the higher score. So we're not stopping here at the TOPSIS analysis, as previously mentioned by Professor Mithulan, that there are 3 stages in this methodology. After we do the TOPSIS, we know the ranking, we know that solar comes first, for example, hydro, and then wind, geothermal, and biomass. What we do next is we go back to the calculation, what is the optimal mix? And we use that CI score. We go back to the CI score. There are 4 weightage there: base scenario, economic priority, technical priority, and environmental priority. And we calculate back to get how much percentage of each technology is we consider as the optimal way to achieve the net zero. For the economic priority, here we can say on the right side, 76.8 gigawatt in total of capacity needed. That's translated into because we name it economic priority. When we translate it into the investment, that's the lowest investment compared to the other weightage. Same thing if we want to environmental priority, for example, it require more capacity, but it avoided more emissions, for example. But it has, of course, more investment would be required. So here, across all 4 stakeholder scenarios, there is a certain range there. If between 76.8 to 85 gigawatt additional capacity would be required, and between 146 to 151 billions of dollars investment, and the total of 237 terawatt hour generation is targeted by 2050. So here's, depending on which are the direction, which are the pathway that we want to use. Again, here we are giving like illustration. If we choose this pathway, then this would be required. This amount of investment would be needed. That's the idea. So what does it mean from all the result that we get in our study? There are 2 things here. First, from the different ranking, different CI score, we could start with hydro because it has more stable CI score in any different weightage settings. Then we could scale up to solar PV as financing and deployment capacity mature. So our research, we're not telling that, oh, solar goes number 1, hydro number 2, then we have to go full into solar. It's not like a black and white situation, but rather we want to diversify. That's why we carefully choose the word prioritize. It's not we select one and then leave the others, no. But how much is the optimal mix? If we want to prioritize solar PV, then how much solar PV would we pursue? if you want to prioritize hydro, then how much hydro it will produce? That's the message that we want to convey in our research. And then the second thing is, this is the amount of investment that would be needed between 146 and 151. So flexible frameworks outperform rigid technology mandates. So this is from our previous, from the first stage, we tested single technology, and finally, on the third stage, we mixed the technology, and clearly this is a better way to pursue a net zero emission. And of course, again, we would like to also emphasize that cross-border interconnection would pretty much help in the regional into achieving the net zero emission. So key takeaways for today's webinar. The first one is solar PV has the highest potential. However, it is sensitive to economic priorities. And of course, it needs a supportive financing for the future. And second one is hydro is the most reliable foundation. It has balanced performance with excellent ranking stability. And the third one, diversification wins. The optimal mix outperforms single technology strategies. And this last one, interconnection multiplies value. It turns national net zero challenges. It is no longer the challenge of each nation, but it is a challenge that we have to address together as a regional. That's all I think from my side. Thank you very much for coming. I'll give you back to the moderator.
Yep, I think.
Hello? Sorry,
Yes.
I think the internet connection is bad from my side. But thank you so much for the presentation, Professor Mithulan, Dr. Shah, and Mas Pinto. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
We can hear you.
We
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think what I can take from your presentation is that there is no single renewable technology that stands out in every situation. So for this, the stronger approach is to combine different resources and make use of regional interconnection to build a more resilient BIMP power system. And I think that gives us some interesting points to discuss. I think my camera is not working, right? Can you see me?
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
No, we
Not
can't
yet.
see you,
Not-
but we
Yeah.
can
But-
hear
Okay.
you clearly.
At least,
Yeah, you
at
are.
least you can hear me well, okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, okay. So I think without further ado, we can move into the discussion sessions. And for those joining us today, please feel free to send your questions for the speakers through the Q&A box. You can ask about the paper itself or even broader questions around regional energy planning. But for now, I'll start off with a few questions of my own. Perhaps we can start with the approach behind the paper. I think one of the key contributions of the paper is linking leap scenario outputs directly with TOPSIS. So my question is, what led you to choose these particular combinations, and what did each method bring to the analysis?
Pinto, would you like to answer that
Yeah.
one, please?
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Dr. Rakib. Yeah. So there are two things here. One is LEAP. I'm pretty sure Ace College is familiar with LEAP.
Yeah,
Um,
Pinto, go ahead. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. So LEAP gives us like a technical things. For example, the forecasting in terms of how many capacity would be needed, how many generation would be power would be generated, how much emission would be avoided. That kind of things could be calculated in LEAP. However, LEAP cannot like consider, I would say, not included the factors in other things like, for example, land use, water use, or job creation. That kind of factors sometimes is a little bit subjective. Another thing would say that this also a qualitative measures that cannot be inputted directly into LEAP. That's where the TOPSIS come. But we in our study here, we are not using two tools in parallel, but rather from LEAP we fed it into the TOPSIS. So this is the one of the methodological contribution here. Many study also use TOPSIS or other MCDA analysis to do the ranking, similar thing to do what are the best approach, for example. But most of the time, I would say it's not combining, it's not linking them directly. So that's the linking between LEAP and TOPSIS that would gives the contribution of this methodology. So that's what I hope this answer would clear the answer your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Pinto. For Dr. Rakib and Professor Mithulan, do you want to add more from Mas Pinto?
Yeah, like in general, the TOPSIS is considered as one of the multi-criteria decision-making analysis, right? So often we see work separately, either LEAP analysis or multi-criteria decision-making analysis. Here we have combined, since LEAP cannot handle this multi-criteria decision-making, and combine them to come up with the comprehensive sort of ranking, even though the ranking, as Pinto was suggesting in his final remarks, we wanted to take it as a guidance. So we have to keep that in mind. Solar photovoltaic becoming as a mainstream technology. But however, we suggested that let's develop hydro and then solar. When the economic needs are met, the solar can be developed. By developing hydro, we can also just consider it as a potential for storage as well. So storage and then solar and then followed by other things. So in the methodological contribution, yeah, we combine these two. That is the main features of this work.
Yep.
Okay,
We can.
Dr. Rakib, do you want to add more?
No, I think let's move forward. I can see that there are other
Okay.
question and discussion as well. So I think concerning time, it's better to move forward.
Okay, so yeah, I think I also saw several questions in our Q&A box. I think we can start from question from Firman Ridwan. He asked about what are the reasons or factors that cause biomass to consistently rank lowest in the percentage research when considering real-world practices. As we know, biomass uses organic materials.
I think I would like to start this discussion. Considering my long experience, by the way, I have working with the ASEAN system and also grew up in somewhat in Thailand. So I know that the soft corner about the biomass in that region. So and then there is a lot of biomass plant and the things that is happening, but the thing with respect to the biomass is one of the key constraint is there to making a large scale plant and to make the significant moving forward with the net zero transition. Do we have that bigger size of the biomass supply chain is there? That is the key question. So probably 30 megawatt biomass is a very convincing one, but the 300 megawatt of biomass, then that is a key challenge. Because I had a biomass project here and developing a biomass microgrid, but the key challenge what we feel here into developing a biomass microgrid is that sustainable supply of the supply chain. That is one of the key challenges. The second key challenge with the biomass, yes, it is an organic material, but if we looked into the life cycle of that one, you will see that it's not actually contributing to that much of the net zero if you are just burning. So if you are just burning something, it's not contributing to that much of the net zero, but it's actually considered as a key thing. So the main reason of the biomass consistently coming as a low because of it has these supply chain issues, definitely. Definitely, it's not been able to supply as like hydro or the solar or the wind that can come into the system. So when we ranked anything, so I can see also into the question that we were not biased to any technology. Okay, so it's based on the weight and the ranking and what is the technology, social and economical things that give us. It's not a biasness of the solar. It's rather than it gives us with the straight away and the forward pathway that how we can get the net zero transition. Yeah.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add one more point. Like biomass, when it comes to biomass, we considered the technical potential as well. It's not just unlimited. So based on the reports available, there are certain energy resources, renewable energy resources available everywhere. For example, wind and solar. It's the biomass is not as good as wind and solar. So that is one of the biggest constraint why this is marked out or ranked low in our studies.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rakib and Professor Mithulan for your response for the biomass questions. And we also have another questions from Mr. Ruli. He asked in figure 6, taken from the paper, on the required capacity from 2025 to 2050, the solar domination scenario shows significant additional capacity, almost 5 to 6 times higher compared with energy technology. So can you provide more insight on this result?
Yeah, it's obvious because of solar has a very low plant factor. That means we have only energy production during the daytime, and also if you look at the overall efficiency, it's just somewhere around 15 to 20%. We need a bigger footprint. So in other words, we need a bigger land mass and then bigger installed capacity to produce the same amount of energy. That is the reason why we have huge amount of solar investment. That will also blow up the cost a little bit. If the cost is coming down, definitely that's going to become as a mainstream technology, even competing with hydro and other technology. Maybe Pinto can add some other points.
Yeah, that's basically that's the point why solar get very high required capacity, and because just to give a illustration from the scenario is the solar domination scenario means on top of whatever that's already stated in the power development plan of each country, we put solar to achieve whatever required to meet the net zero emission. And in that simulation, obviously we get very high solar. And when we compare to the other scenarios, for example, hydro, to meet the same amount of generation, this only require like third or maybe a quarter from what we need from for the solar capacity. That's the logic behind these scenarios.
Okay, thank you so much. I think when we talk about solars and hydro is one of the interesting contrasts in your paper, right? So I also want to ask, how should policymakers balance this trade-off? Like you said, solar is very strong in every assessment, but on the measure of the assessment, but it is very expensive and we need a lot of capacity. And on the other hand, hydro ranks consistent across the different weighing assumptions. So how should policymakers balance this trade-off when planning for the long term?
Yeah, probably I'll start giving my view. For policymakers, of course, in order to have hydro, we should have the facilities or the reservoir and then that type of facilities. And yeah, the cost of the solar is just coming down. And then on the other hand, solar cannot compete with hydro as a base technology. So, and also there is also another element we have to consider, which is the intermittency behind the solar energy. Fortunately, hydro has that potential of storing and then releasing water in the form of pump hydro. So, in my opinion, my view, the policymakers should balance between these two, and then just considering hydro development in conjunction with the solar development in order to find a good pathway to achieve net zero emission. Definitely this, otherwise we have to just rely on battery energy storage, if not hydro. Yeah.
I think I would answer this one in a time time required to install the resources. So right now, if you looked into the time that is consumed to commission any project, I would say that the transmission is required something in between 5 to 6 years. If I take it the Australian context and what is coming into the Department of Energy, then if you go to any hydro and large scale base load power plant, it usually takes the similar type of the transmission interconnection time, like 6 to 8 years, let's say. Now, battery and the solar, those are mostly the modular one. They usually take, with respect to the interconnection request, what happened in Australia actually, we send the interconnection request to AMO, then AMO do different type of the grid connection studies, and also have some sort of environmental things. So it's almost the same in anywhere into other part of the world, that it requires the required approval. So from the approval to install battery and the solar, that takes in between 2 to 3 to 4 years. Now, one of the key things that is everywhere is happening. If you go to any of the energy conference or any places, you will hear about that one, that our load is significantly growing. Why the load is significantly growing? Because of the data center, where what we are doing now here is that people are sitting in different places and we're using the data. And with the 30 years old of people in a region where many people will be relying on the AI computation and the data, these loads are coming thick and fast. And the way these loads are coming thick and fast is something like that. In development of the data center takes, I think, 2 to 3 years. So that means you are always behind your large scale generation if you are considering this large data center coming. So policymakers need to come and sit and find out that how I will match this gap. Okay, I understand that the data center of 700 megawatt is coming. Now, can I make a 700 megawatt in a 1 day or in a time frame that's the data center is coming? No, I can't do that much. So I have to prioritize and find out the solution, which will be a mixture of solar, which will be a mixture of wind, battery, pump hydro, and any other sources that is required. But there are some sources, like for example, the geothermal. Yes, there could be a lot of potential for the geothermal. But if you don't have the transmission corridor there, then you can't tap this geothermal. So policymakers need to look closely with the priority and the ranking and how the things are changing over the time.
Pinto, do you want to add?
I think a little bit just to I don't know, somehow from the previous questions, I also feel like this ranking is not saying that we have to select this, we have to choose this and leave the other one. No, we're not going that way, but rather we are saying that this technology for solar and hydro comes at the highest. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go 100% to that one, but if you look at our optimal mix number, we are not leaving hydro, we are not neglecting geothermal and biomass, but we use all of them together and we combine all of them together in such a way that it gives, of course, the least amount of investment to meet net zero, but also we have to maximize the job creation. We have to maximize as well the generation that required to fulfill the demand, the load demand. That's to me personally, it's not a selection. It's not this or that, but rather let's combine it. Let's work together. Philippines has geothermal, for example. Biomass probably best installed in Indonesian side in Kalimantan, and hydro huge in Malaysia. So that's combine all of them together. That's why the regional interconnection is required is investigated in this study. So that's from my take. I would say it's not really solar or hydro, solar or biomass, but rather how can we combine solar, hydro with the optimal mix based on the ranking that we get from TOPSIS framework. That's the that's my answer to the questions.
Okay, thank you so much. I think all of your answers was very helpful, particularly in thinking about how these tools can support actual policy decisions. I think we are focusing on the technology, but there's some questions from Natania. She asked about the as ASEAN is trying to scale up regional interconnectivity, especially with the establishment of the ABG MOU, how transferable is the findings for the BIMP regions are to the broader ASEAN power grid? Are there particular ASEAN countries or sub-regions where you think the approach could be especially relevant?
Yeah, in my
I
opinion,
think okay. Yeah, you go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Okay.
the framework can be applied, but the challenge is the data, right? For the entire ASEAN, getting the data and then applying. I also wanted to add one more point on the technological ranking. That's a guidance. Not necessarily we leave the low rank technology. We didn't mean to say that we should discard biomass. So biomass may be coming as a low mixture in the entire mix, but with applicability of this one in an ASEAN context, the data is going to be the challenge. And if the data is available, definitely we can apply it. I didn't see any problem in applying the methodology in the entire ASEAN, which will be a good exercise.
I think I will take it back to a little bit in 2017, while I and Professor Mithulan was working with University of Malaya on looking into the entire cross-border transmission of the ASEAN power grid. The key challenge that we found that it's the lack of the data, and then mainly looking into the publicly available data and work on that one. I think we have another publication that we have done on the cross-border power trading and what the lesson learned, which will be, I think, available very quickly. We will share that one probably with the AAs. That the main reason is that the main reason why we take this particular area. The particular area we have taken this one that for doing any ranking studies or anything, we found that we have a sufficient data that need to be test this methodology for this area. That's the reason. But our main goal is to do that one for the inter-ASEAN power grid. Like, for example, I can remember in 2017, and even the work that we had done, Pinto, I, and Dr. Mithulan, the work that we have done is that in the cross-border power trading and ASEAN power grid development and all those studies, if there is a data transparency and data that is required for this type of study, because there are a lot of uncertainties associated with that one, then this could have been done very easily. So the reason why we have taken this one, mainly the constraint and availability of the data, but the work that we have done, and we have been doing it since 2017, that can easily be replicated to the ASEAN power grid. And we are always open to have a collaborations. And if you feel that you have enough data and the things, yes, we are happy to collaborate, and we will be able to translate that one to the inter-ASEAN power grid.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rakib. I think as a modeler myself, I also can relate with the data problems. But yeah. And I think we also have some questions regarding the net zero. So the question is, given that achieving net zero requires replacing fossil fuel baseload power, geothermal energy offers an unmatched 24/7 capacity factor compared to intermittent solar and wind. However, its high upfront exploration costs and long development timelines remain major bottlenecks. From a policy and investment standpoint, what innovative financing mechanism or risk mitigation strategies do you think are most critical to accelerate private investment in utility-scale geothermal projects?
No,
I think the
definitely
audience
that's a,
like geothermal today.
you know, on the other hand, the geothermal potential are not there everywhere, right? And there is
Yes.
no unlimited potential. If possible, of course, the cost is going to be really high, and then definitely that's not in the closer to load centers, and that also need to be considered. That's going to come up with an added cost of transmission as well. So we got to factor in all these things in developing geothermal potential. Of course, we agree with that statement about the 24/7 availability and then base load and beyond.
Oh, okay. Soalnya gue forward juga question sih. Apa sih?
Yeah, I think 24/7 capability of the geothermal is something that people people can attracted to. So with my experience of geothermal in western part of the Victoria, is that the same type of the question was there from the community and the council and the different group, that okay, why we are investing the offshore solar in the east part of the Victoria rather than we have a geothermal. But the problem with the geothermal is that is this enough heat it can generate? Probably the resources are there, multiple resources, and near to the load center resources is there, but can it generate that enough heat that is required for running the synchronous generator? Or is this heat is the complementary which can be used for the heating purposes or reheating purposes and those type, or industrial heating? So one of the mechanism in geothermal that in the policy way is that if there is not enough heat there, what we have seen in certain area in Victoria is not enough heat energy is there to make it's a sustainable and 24/7 power generation. So rather than it can be tapped into and add as a supplementary to the industrial heat. So that could be another risk mitigation strategies that people can do. And it can add on the values, but if it is there, it can be add on the values with some probably a combined gas turbine type of the generators or those type of the facilities. So that can be one of the risk mitigation factor.
I also wanted to share another experience we had in Queensland. There is a place called Cooper's Basin, and then some geothermal potential were discovered, but turned out to be extremely expensive because this is underneath the hard rock. We have to drill the rock to tap the heat, and then eventually, after a lot of studies and a lot of investment, that was given up. the cost is also another important factor we should consider in coming up with optimal mix, and then eventually the main target is to achieve the net zero emission faster, right? So whatever technology it takes to mix it up, and yeah, that is the combination of technology we should be going for with all the constraints. It's an optimization problem eventually.
Yeah, I think. Thank you so much for your response. And because the time is nearing, I think perhaps we should wrap up this discussions. I am really enjoying our today's discussions, but I want to ask one more way forward questions for three of you. If you had to identify one priority, what would be the most important next step for applying this kind of integrated technology planning in BIMP and more broadly through the ASEAN Power Grid? And just to keep us on time, please keep your answer brief and focus on, I think, one key priority for each. Maybe we can start from Professor Mithulan.
But the question was way forward, right? So
Yes.
Priority.
all right, yeah, way forward. Even though the data is a scarcity, it's good to think about the region holistically, because every region should contribute, every country should contribute depending on their individual circumstances. So it's good to start a study globally, means the whole ASEAN region. And then while considering the individual plan, it's good to factor in that whole study and then see for the entire region what's really come as a priority. And also, we strongly believe that after doing a number of studies, uh, doing an interconnection is going to be definitely beneficial. It's not going to be costly. Leaving our political differences among different countries, if we just promote the interconnection, through the cross-border trading, it's possible to achieve that net zero emission. But in terms of technology priority, we have to do a holistic study for the entire ASEAN and also individual studies. We can't discard the individual interests. What I mean is the individual countries' need and their priorities, their power development plan. I think that should be the next step moving forward with this type of studies initiative in energy transition for ASEAN.
Yeah, to my point of view, there are few things that we have oversimplified in this study. Definitely, we looked into the point of view of generation itself, but we haven't looked into the demand and the flexibility. So I want to reemphasize that the way that the load will be grown, so we have to take into the consideration of flexibility from the demand, and then that match with the generation and the generation capacity, so that we can create the integrated pathway. So that would be the way forward to integrate the both generation and the demand side, and considering what is happening there, and as well as the number of uncertainties that is associated there.
For me, yeah, it's a difficult question actually. What to next thing for ASEAN? For me, I think, because I'm looking at the perspective of doing the multi-criteria decision, and the word is decision, and to make a decision, I think we have to sit together. I mean, there are a lot of stakeholders I know in ASEAN: government, ministry, utility company. Probably this kind of exercising of like weighting scenarios, different scenarios, we could sit together and see how the directions goes. For example, utility company may say, we want to prioritize into the investment. For example, the less investment would be better for us. And another thing, maybe government would say, oh, we want to see the environmental ministry, and some other ministry also want to have more job creation, for example. That way, I think, from my perspective, sit together and explore this kind of exercise, give weightage, and probably also explore more criteria. We only cover like 11 criteria with 12 scenarios. Probably if these 10 countries with all relevant ministries and utilities sit together, there could be hundreds of scenarios, hundreds of criteria, and we could see together where we are heading. And I would say this would give back to us ASEAN Center for Energy to ACE. This is the role of ACE to to become a catalyst. I remember ACE will be the catalyst and to direct all the relevant stakeholders and to lead the way for this ASEAN power generation and to meet the regional net zero emission target. So for me, I would say that's from my perspective.
Okay, thank you so much. I think those are some very useful perspective on the way forward for the region. And with that, I would like to thank all three of our speakers, Mas Pinto, Dr. Rakib, and Professor Mithulan for the very insightful discussions. I think we've gained a better understanding on how different renewable technologies can complement each other and how regional cooperations and the ASEAN Power Grid can support a more resilient and sustainable energy future. And thank you as well to everyone who joined us today and for your questions and participations. And with that, I will hand it back to our MC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flavia, our speakers, and all our participants for such an engaging discussion and thoughtful questions as well. So, to summarize, today's session has walked us through the key findings of the paper Sustainable Energy Transition for BIMP Regional Power Grid Technology Ranking and Optical Mix. We see that the paper, drawing on an integrated modeling and multi-criteria framework, found that solar PV and hydropower emerge as the most promising technologies, with solar leading on environmental and job creation criteria, and hydro offering as the most consistent economic performance across different stakeholder priorities. So reaching net zero by 2050 in the BIMP region will require between 76 and 85 gigawatts of additional capacity and up to USD 151 billion in investment, with regional power interconnection and diversified energy portfolios identified as key to turning national climate commitments into a shared regional opportunity. So it has truly been an insightful discussion. Okay, so before we conclude today's session, I would like to invite our moderator, speakers, as well as Ms. Adila, if she's still in the meeting as well. Okay, so we are going to have a photo session. So please get ready and prepare your smiles for the camera. Okay, so is everyone ready? All right, let me leave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. One more time. Let's take a picture. 3, 2, 1. Okay, and that concludes today's ARNECC special webinar. So thank you everyone for tuning in to today's session. We hope the discussion provides new insights and valuable perspectives for all the participants. So stay connected with us through our social media channels, newsletter, and website to keep up with the latest updates on ARNECC and development within ASEAN's energy and climate landscape. So my name is Nadia Geraldine Handani. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next ARNECC webinar. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you. Bye, everyone.